Before we start anything new, let's go back to what we did on Monday or Tuesday, whichever day you guys were here. And go back to that SOHCAHTOA. We're just going to do a couple of review problems just to make sure you remember how these work before we go on to the new stuff. Directions are going to tell you to find x. And if you remember back to the first day we did this, the x we were finding was one of the sides of your triangle. And the triangle they give you has to be a right triangle this year. Next year, you'll get into some not right triangle trig, but this year, everything's going to be a right triangle. Yeah, let's just make this one up. Let's put an angle up here. What angle do you want this to be? Somebody throw out a number.
34.
34. All right, what about this side? 4. And we're going to put x over here. And from here, we are going to solve x by using SOHCAHTOA, since we're on a right triangle. So again, what we'll do is start with your non-right angle, which is this 34-degree angle. And then you want to identify your sides. That 4 is across from the right angle. That's going to be the hypotenuse. And then the x is next to the 34-degree angle. That's going to be the adjacent side. And once you get to this point, you can go to SOHCAHTOA. SOHCAHTOA is going to tell us which one of our trig functions we're going to use. In this picture here, we have the adjacent side and the hypotenuse. Which trig function uses adjacent and hypotenuse?
Cosine.
Cosine. CAH stands for cosine, is adjacent over hypotenuse. Since we have adjacent and hypotenuse, we know we're going to use the cosine. What always goes right behind the abbreviation for cosine? Angle, the 34-degree angle. Then we have our equal sign. Okay, we'll put our fraction behind it. Our fraction is going to come from that SOHCAHTOA. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So we want adjacent on top, that's going to be x. Hypotenuse on the bottom is going to be 4. And then I'm going to go back to the way I showed you at the end on Monday or Tuesday, whenever you guys were in here. If you make this into a proportion, we can put that cosine of 34 over 1. When you do that, it makes a proportion. And to solve proportions, if you remember back to a couple chapters ago, we cross multiply. Cosine of 34 times 4, we're going to write as 4 times the cosine of 34. The reason I don't put that 4 behind here is because then it might look like the cosine of 344, which causes some problems. So if you have a number, you're going to put that in front of the sine, cosine, or tangent. When we cross multiply this part, you're going to get 1 times x, which is x. And now we can go to our calculators. So grab your calculator if you haven't already. On the calculator, depends on what kind of calculator you have. A lot of you can put it in just like it looks, 4 times the cosine of 34. If we do that, we get about 3.316. On the test, I think we're going to have you round to the nearest tenth, so we'll say 3.3. All right, if that one didn't work on your calculator, try the 34 first, then hit the cosine button, then multiply by 4, and that should get you to 3.3. Is there anybody's calculator not getting them to 3.3? All right, let's try another one. Here's our right triangle. Let's start with the angle. What do you want the angle to be?
17.
17. And we'll mix it up here. Let's do, we'll call x here. What do you want this side to be?
20.
What'd you say?
20.
20, all right. So there's our setup. We have a 17-degree angle, we have an x and a 20. Once again, I'm going to identify what parts we have. If you go from your non-right angle, the 17-degree angle, this 20 is across from the 17. That's going to be the opposite side. and the x is right next to it. That's going to be the adjacent side. The side we're not using this time around is the hypotenuse, the one across from the right angle. Once you've identified your sides, now you can go to SOHCAHTOA to figure out which trig function you want to use. This time around, we have adjacent side and opposite side. Which trig function uses adjacent and opposite?
Tangent.
Tangent. TOA stands for tangent, is an opposite over adjacent. So we know to use the tangent. Behind the tangent abbreviation, we'll go the angle, which is 17 degrees. We've got your equal sign. The fraction on the right is going to be the OA, the opposite over the adjacent. Tangent is always opposite over adjacent. The opposite side is 20. The adjacent side is x. And now once again, I'm going to make this into a proportion by putting this over 1. Once you put that over 1, you can cross multiply. Tangent of 17 times x, I'm going to write as x times the tangent of 17. 20 times 1 is 20. And we're almost there. We want to solve for x. We want to get the x all by itself. So to get x all alone, I'm going to divide both sides. What would I divide both sides by? Tangent of 17. We do that because those reduce down to 1, leaving you with x on the left. And then again, your calculator should be able to handle this. 20 divided by the tangent of 17.
Which would just be 65.4.
Right about 65.4. That's all there is to it. All right. Is anybody's calculator not working, getting them to 65.4? All right. Does anybody need to see some more of these? Now, if you notice on here, we were using sine, cosine, or tangent to find missing sides. Both of these had missing sides. So this is going to be where we're going. If you want to find a missing side, we're going to use sine, cosine, or tangent. Hello?
Oh, I need to see Sarah.
Oh, I thought you wanted to do some trigonometry.
Oh, no.
No?
No thanks.
Okay. She needs to take her stuff? Or
Yeah, she's got to finish testing.
Oh, okay. Good luck, Sarah. So the part we've already done, if you're going to find a missing side, we're using sine, cosine, or tangent. If we want to find a missing angle, it's going to require one more button on our calculator. If we want to find a missing angle, we're going to use what we call the inverse of these signs. On your calculator, the inverse of the sine is the sine to the -1 power. Inverse of the cosine is the cosine to the -1 power. Inverse of the tangent is the tangent to the -1 power. On your calculator, usually the way it'll set up here, and I think you can see it on my calculator here, you've got the sine, cosine, and tangent buttons. And then right above the sine, cosine, and tangent buttons are where you have the inverses. Sine to the -1, cosine to the -1, tangent to the -1. Now, to get to those little numbers above the buttons on your calculator, we have to use our second or our shift button. Now, every calculator is a little bit different, so I'm just going to show you on my calculator what it'll look like. When I hit the second button, that's going to take me from on the regular keys, it's going to take me right above the keys. So if I want the inverse of the sine, after hitting that second button, I hit the sine button, and you can see it comes up as sine to the -1. So it's just one extra button to get there. You're going to hit the second or the shift button before you hit the sine, cosine, or tangent button. All right, we'll show you some of those here in a second. But for now, this is kind of where we're going. So remember those two things, because this, when you get to your test, that's going to be the big thing. If you're finding a missing side, you're going to use the regular sine, cosine, or tangent. If they want you to find a missing angle, you've got to use the inverse. All right, let's show you some examples of how this looks. When you see the problems, it's going to look very, very similar to what we just got done doing. The difference this time around is that the x, instead of being a side, the x is one of the angles. But then from there, it's pretty much really the exact same thing we've been doing. All right, you've got your right triangle, so we're going to use SOHCAHTOA to do that. We're going to start with our non-right angle that they give us. The non-right angle they give us is the x. And now we'll identify our parts. We'll start with the 20. Is that 20 the opposite, adjacent, or hypotenuse?
Adjacent.
That's adjacent. It's right next to the x. How about the 6? Is that opposite, adjacent, or hypotenuse?
Opposite.
That's opposite. This time around, we're not using the hypotenuse, which is across from the right angle. So now we can go to SOHCAHTOA. On our picture here, we have the opposite side and the adjacent side. Which trig function are we going to use for that? Tangent. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. We have the opposite and the adjacent. So we'll start off the exact same way. We're going to use the tangent because we have the opposite and the adjacent side. Behind the tangent goes the angle. The angle in this case is x. And that's the variable we're going to solve for. And then on the right-hand side, you're going to do your fraction to get the tangent. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. Opposite side here is 6. Adjacent side is 20. So we have the tangent of x is equal to 6 over 20. Now again, x is the variable that we want to solve for. So what this equation is saying is it's saying the tangent of some angle is going to be 6 over 20. To find out what that angle is, we go to the inverse button because we're trying to find an angle. So when we go to put this in the calculator, what we're going to do is we're going to hit the inverse tangent of 6 over 20. Now again, it depends on what kind of calculator you have. If you checked out one of these blue ones from me, here's how it's going to look. We want the inverse tangent. So to get to the inverse tangent button, I have to hit the second or the shift button, then the tangent button. And you should see tangent to the -1 come up when you do that. And then behind it, we're going to put 6 divided by 20. When I hit the equal sign, I get about 16.699. So we'll round that to about 16.7. And then remember, this is a angle here, so that would actually be, if you're going to label it, that'd be 16.7 degrees. Now, if you have the other type of calculator, you're going to do the 6 and divide it by the 20 first. Then you'll go in and you'll hit your second or your shift button, and then hit the tangent to get your inverse tangent. And then you got to hit the equal sign at the end, and that'll get you to 16.7. All right, once again, anybody having troubles getting their calculator to go to 16.7? Okay, let's look at another one. I'm not sure how many you're going to need to see today because this is pretty much what we've already done. We're just adding that one extra step on the end. This time our right triangle is going to have sides of 3 and 15. The angle we're looking for is x. And now when you get to your test next week, or your quiz next week, when you see this, the minute you see that x is an angle, you know that you're going to use the inverse sine, cosine, or tangent to get your answer. If that x happens to be a side, that would tell you you're going to use the regular sine, cosine, or tangent. So you kind of want to start thinking that way. As soon as I see this picture, I see x as an angle. That tells me I need to use inverse to get my answer. All right, let's start it off the exact same way. We're going to start with our non-right angle they give us, which is x. The 15, is that 15 going to be the opposite, adjacent, or hypotenuse? That's your hypotenuse. It's across from the right angle, so that's your hypotenuse. And the 3, is that opposite, adjacent, or hypotenuse?
Adjacent.
That's adjacent. That one's right next to the x. Now we can go back to our SOHCAHTOA. And eventually you're not going to have to write all this out. Some of you are probably already there. You can just think it through in your head. But if you need to, write it out. SOHCAHTOA. We have hypotenuse and adjacent this time around. Which trig function uses hypotenuse and adjacent? Cosine. CAH stands for cosine, is adjacent over hypotenuse. So we need cosine, our abbreviation for that is COS. And behind the cosine always goes the angle. What's the angle this time around? X is your angle. So that's the variable we're going to solve for. To get cosine, we put the adjacent side over the hypotenuse. Adjacent side is 3, hypotenuse is 15. When I get to this point with my equation, this says the cosine of some angle is going to be 3 divided by 15. 315. To find out what that angle is, since I'm looking for a missing angle, I'm going to use the inverse of the cosine. So to get this equation here, I'm going to do the inverse cosine of 3/15. Let's go to the calculator to do that. Again, to get your inverse cosine, you got to hit the second or the shift button, then your cosine button. And then behind it, we want 3/15. So 3, whoops, I didn't multiply. Let's go back and change that. 3 divided by 15. Inverse cosine of 3/15 is about 78.5. Once again, if you're labeling it, this would be degrees because we found a missing angle. How many think they got the hang of it already? Okay. Anybody need to see another one? Ready to try one yourself? All right, let's do this one. Let's do this right triangle. We've got sides of 19 and 13, and the x they want us to find is down here. All right, you take this one on your own, get as far as you can, see if you can get all the way to the answer, if possible. If you can't, just go as far as you can. These look very good. Anybody want some more time to finish that? Okay, when you set it up from the x, you've got the hypotenuse for 19. The side 19 is hypotenuse. The 13, that side is the adjacent. If you go to SOHCAHTOA, we got hypotenuse and adjacent. That tells you to use the cosine. Cosine abbreviated COS. Behind it goes the angle, which is x. And then we want adjacent over hypotenuse. Adjacent side is 13. Hypotenuse is 19. So the cosine of some angle is going to be 13/19. To figure out what that angle is, we're going to do the inverse of the cosine. I want 13/19. So if I do that, hit the second button, inverse of the cosine, I want 13 divided by 19. Comes out to about 46.8. Any questions on how I got to here? Okay, how many had it right? Yeah, that looks good. Okay. Need more examples, or are you ready to move on? Ready? Okay. Now, the assignment for this, some of you started this on Monday or Tuesday, whenever you were here, so you may have already done part of this assignment. But here's the entire thing. Let's see, we got 16, 18, 20, 28 to 33, and the new part today is 36 to 43. That's your new part today. So if you already started this back on Monday or Tuesday, just pick up where you left off and finish those problems, 36 to 43. If you didn't do it the other day, then you got the whole assignment to work on. Answer for these are on Google Classroom, so you can check them while you go. And when you go on to Google Classroom, you have to kind of scroll down to where it says Show More, because the answer key is hidden underneath the stuff below where it says Show More. Lauren, can you hit the light, please? Thank you.